It's your home for the first reaction and analysis after the Dogs play. This is DawgNation Postgame, brought to you by Cercheros, Royal Caribbean, Circle K, and Georgia Spa Company. Now live from the UGA Bookstore in Athens, here's your host, Brandon Adams.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome into our DawgNation Postgame show. We're live here at the UGA Bookstore, and boy, you already know the storyline here on this. Incredibly disappointing. Georgia loses to Alabama again. Hard to believe we're even saying that, but that is the case here. 24-21 is the final. Many of you know I've had some voice issues. I will not be with you for the full show tonight. In just a couple of minutes, I'm going to tag out. Kaylee Mansell going to take you the rest of the way home. She'll have Rodrigo Blankenship stopping by to be a part of the show. Jeff Sentell, reaction from the Georgia locker room. All of that is coming up here over the course of our time. She was kind enough, though, to allow me to have a few words here off the top while my voice is working to share a couple of thoughts about this one. Obviously, I think the big takeaway on all of this is going to be the fact that it's this opponent for Georgia again. I'm not a superstitious person. I don't believe in hexes. I don't believe in mystical powers or whatever else. But when you watch the same result over and over again over the course of years, boy, you're really left to believe that Alabama has just had Georgia's number. That's all there is to that. And tonight, another example of that. And when you look at this game in particular, I think one of the things that comes to mind for me right away is that going back to DawgNation Daily throughout the week, I had said, hey, if Georgia can get 165 yards rushing from its running backs, that would maybe be a magic number that will allow Georgia to win this game. Well, as it turns out, Georgia runs for more than 200 yards, well in excess of 200 yards rushing today. And as I'm watching that play out and seeing what's going on in the game, I found myself many times wondering, how is this not just a Georgia win? How is this not a comfortable Georgia win with margin, giving the success that the Dogs were having running the football today? What was it that prevented that typically very predictive number that would oftentimes suggest wins? What was it that kept that from being true for Georgia here today? And I think ultimately it comes down to a couple of things. The big story, of course, is that in the first half of this game, let's just call it what it was, Georgia was not squashing a grape defensively. Could not get off the field in third down. And unfortunately, against the same opponent, Alabama, for 2 consecutive years of playing this team in the month of September, you've got a situation in which Georgia just didn't have those defensive answers against Alabama. They're moving it at will. They're making pretty much whatever they wanted to make happen, they're making happen, including at the end of the first half, even getting the big offensive tackle involved, throwing the ball to him. Really, it's almost as if offensively in that first half, Alabama was almost toying with Georgia. Obviously, it did get much better in the second half. The Georgia defense gave it a chance to win the game. But in the first half here, Alabama was getting whatever it wanted. So that's the first thing that I think negated was otherwise a really successful day. Chauncey Bowens, for instance, very good day. Here are 2 other things that come up in all of this. Georgia had 2 chances offensively, big chances in the second half, and did not capitalize on either one. There is the offensive drive right after Georgia defensively had gotten the 4th down stop. They quickly go 3 and out. One of those plays ended up being the drop by Talon Taylor, obviously reminiscent of 2024 when Georgia's offense was plagued by drops throughout the season. That ended up being true again here today. That drive squandered when it seems like momentum was really ready to go Georgia's way. That drive being squandered obviously ends up being a big deal. And, of course, the other thing that folks are going to debate is on the next offensive drive when Georgia gets down deep into Alabama territory with a decision to make on 4th down, don't kick the field goal, which would have tied the game, run up quickly to go for it, and instead of being under center and quarterback sneak or getting Josh McCray involved, McCray had been the short yardage hero against Tennessee, it's a little bit of a misdirection play you might want to call, where you go back to to Cash Jones. Jones trying the wide side of the field, easily upended. That drive stopped, and that's about as close to scoring as Georgia would get in the rest of the game. So it's another one of these games against Alabama where you're going to be doing a lot of woulda, coulda, shouldas of, boy, if this had gone different and that had gone different. But ultimately in this game here today, once again against this same opponent, the way we've often discussed, Georgia really has nobody but itself to blame. An incredibly disappointing day here today. Now, let me remind you, we're live here at the UGA Bookstore. If you're leaving the game, I know you're not in a good mood, but you can come by and see us. Kaylee Mansell, you're going to get a chance to spend a lot of time with her tonight. Our guy, Rodrigo Blankenship, is here. We're going to get a chance to talk to him here just for a moment. Listen, I get it, y'all. This is not the conversation we wanted to be having. Nobody understands that better than I do. I was really, really hopeful that this would be one of those days in which Georgia kept its home winning streak alive by vanquishing a foe that's caused a lot of issues. Obviously, tonight that's not the case. And I think there's a lot of criticism that can go around for why it did not happen for Georgia. It's at least worth considering, and I know this is going to sound hollow. I totally understand that, and I'm not expecting you to buy into this too much, but it's at least worth considering, though, that in a season like this, in college football, we believe before it's all said and done, everyone's going to lose. Last year in college football, everyone did lose. The eventual national champion lost twice in the regular season. The only team to go into the playoff undefeated lost in its first playoff game. That's obviously Oregon. So for Georgia, this loss will be different than other losses we've talked about in previous years where you really did feel like your chance at a championship was greatly harmed because college football just used to put a lot of emphasis on even one loss. This was a sport in which perfection was almost the standard. Perfection's not really the standard anymore. That's not quite what this is anymore. Teams will lose. Georgia may lose again before the season's done. But it can still make the college football playoff. It can still compete for a national championship. But as I say that, I know full well that does not take the pain away from a night in which Georgia loses to a team that has just caused so much frustration for it over the course of the Kirby Smart era. The one thing that Smart has not been able to figure out are these games against the Alabama Crimson Tide, at least for the most part, the 2021 national championship game notwithstanding. So even though we know there can still be bright future for Georgia and plenty of good things that can happen this season, obviously the headline tonight's going to be, I can't believe it's another loss to this same team again. Alabama is frankly a shadow of what it was in the Nick Saban era. Other teams seem to, Florida State, that just lost to Virginia, beats them week one. Last year, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, which was a 6-6 team. We saw Alabama, frankly, losing to not exactly the most distinguished collection of teams, but for whatever reason, that's not quite something that Georgia can figure out. And when it comes to the side of the ball that DeBoer's the most comfortable with on the offensive side of the ball, having the number of the Georgia defense, especially to begin games, has been a big reason why. All right, let me remind you, as I said before, we're live here at the UGA Bookstore. You can come here and you can get stocked up. You can be looking great for the rest of the season. Honorable Reserve, Peter Millar, Horn Legend, the Nike Coaches Gear, Johnny O, so many of the great brands. You can find those here at the UGA Bookstore. Also the customization shop. You want the NIL style jersey, you want the special patches and things like that, you can get those on your jerseys here across an entire array of sports, not just football. All of that here at the UGA Bookstore. All right, we're going to get your phone calls here too. You can have your chance to sound off once you didn't like tonight. Obviously no shortage of that, whether it be defensive breakdowns, curious decision on that fourth down call to give the ball to Cash Jones, and another crucial drop coming right at the hands of right in the moment when it looked like Georgia could get some real momentum going. So all of that's on the table here tonight. You can give us a call, 678-645-DAWG, D-A-W-G, 678-645-DAWG, or you can click the link and be a part of the show. Let me also bring our guy, Rodrigo Blankenship, here on this. And I'm going to pass the baton over to Kaylee Mansell here, too. We'll get this conversation going here, get a chance to hear from them here tonight and talk about all this. If Rodrigo's ready, Rodrigo, you can hop on over here with us. You might want to come around this way. So as I said before, we'll take your calls. I'm going to pass the baton to Kaylee, and we're going to have a good night, or at least make the most of the situation here. Obviously, talking about a very disappointing situation. Rodrigo, we always appreciate your analysis. Obviously, you know what it feels like to be a part of big wins. Anybody that plays football will also experience the heartbreaking losses. For Georgia against this opponent, that's what this ends up being again. Another one of those heartbreaking losses to Alabama. What did you see tonight? And just to go big picture to begin things here, what was your overall analysis of it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely frustrating, definitely disappointing. I feel like we were in a position to win, and we had our opportunities, and that's something that I was talking about with my wife on the way over here is, last year we were playing from behind the whole game, and this game, they threw some punches early, but we threw some punches back, and it felt like it was going to be different. It felt like it was going to be more back and forth and more of an even matchup, and for the most part, that's what it ended up being. I know that a lot of the stats are going to be very similar for both teams across the board. It's just disappointing. As you mentioned, we had that big drop pass that, that was going to be a walk-in touchdown. We had the Frazier fumble early in the game that really put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths early on in the game. I think that's a play that, when you look back at when the game is over, you might have forgot just because it happened so early, but that changed the course of the game very early on. And then we also had that fourth down situation where we got that 4th and short. You're in range to kick a field goal to tie it, and then it's like everybody can take a breath of fresh air because we leveled the playing field at that point, and then it's a brand new ball game, but we ended up deciding to go for it. And I know that everyone is going to be questioning the play call or the personnel, the fact that it was Cash Jones in there as opposed to maybe one of our heavier backs. But I think we were in a position, we had opportunities to win the game. We just didn't execute when we really needed to, and that was the difference tonight.
Yeah, what was your thought on A, as a kicker, not kicking the field goal there, and B, obviously you're trying to hurry up the line. You're going to try to catch Alabama napping a bit, but it's not under center. It's not quarterback sneak. It's a wide side of the field with Cash Jones. What was your thought on all of that as someone who obviously follows the game closely?
I mean, my thought was take the points. I think
kickers want to kick it, right?
Yeah, kickers want to kick it. I trust Peyton. I know he's going to go in there and knock it down for us. I think back to a situation where we went to visit LSU in 2018. They got the ball to start the game. They kicked a field goal on their first possession, and we drove right down the field, got in range for a field goal, and then tried a fake field goal, and they snuffed it out, and it just took the wind out of our sails right from the get-go. And so it felt like a very similar situation. You have an opportunity to tie the game, get the fans involved, make sure that they're going to be locked in till the very last minute, and instead we decided to go for it, which, maybe sometimes you get in these big games, you want to be a little aggressive. Maybe you go for it, and then you score a touchdown, then you're ahead instead of tied, and then you've got Alabama on their heels the rest of the game. So I can understand it from that perspective, but just me, obviously being a former kicker, I want to go out there, get our team tied up, and then it's a brand new ball game the rest of the way. It's just, unfortunate it didn't go the way that we wanted it to. If it does work out, then we're singing everybody's praises. Oh, what a great decision to go for it there in that tight moment. It's just not the way the cookie crumbled for us tonight.
So I'm going to do a bait and switch on you here. I've been battling laryngitis or something like that. I don't even know what it is for a month now, and so as a way of kind of giving me a little bit of a rest, our good friend Kaylee Mansell is going to step in and take my place, and so she's going to finish the rest of the way here with you. In fact, I think Kaylee's about ready to hop over here with us and get ready to rock and roll on that. Also, Kaylee's going to take your calls, so if you want to jump over here and be a part of it, 678-645-DAWG, DAWG, 678-645-DAWG, DAWG. You can do that, or if you want to click the link and be a part of the broadcast, I'll leave your chance to do that. Rodrigo, I always appreciate your analysis and knowing you and Kaylee will have obviously plenty to say about all of this. We wish we were doing this under happier circumstances, but it's always great to have you here, and appreciate you being a part of the show.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
With that said, I'm going to give it over to the great Kaylee Mansell. Kaylee, thank you so much. Obviously a disappointing night here tonight.
I mean, yeah, this being my first time taking over postgame with you, I knew it would be a lot easier.
Exactly the show we wanted to be doing, right?
I figured it'd probably be a little bit easier if they won, but the reality of the situation is that they didn't, and the frustration from the fans is it's certainly understandable, but that's just the game of football, and of course we're going to break down maybe why this happened, but also try to look ahead to the future too and see what Georgia needs to fix before they take on what's still a really tough SEC schedule.
Awesome stuff, Kayla. Look forward to listening to it.
All right, well, the pressure is really on now. really quick, want to give a shout out to Braden just for even being able to take the time to do this. I know it's been really hard on him this week, so I'm glad that he could start it off. I know it's not what you're used to with me being here, but I've got some thoughts on the game, going to try to empathize, but I really didn't get the chance to hear what you and Brandon were talking about, so just your immediate thoughts on what just happened.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's definitely frustrating, especially with this particular opponent in Alabama. They've been the thorn in our side, ever since Coach Smart got here, and it's just been the hump that we haven't been able to get over yet. And obviously, I know this is going to be very frustrating for a lot of fans, frustrating for myself. Alabama, plagued us when I was here as well. We lost the national championship in 2017, and then in the SEC championship the following year in 2018. So I'm very well acquainted with, falling short against the Crimson Tide, and unfortunately it happened again tonight. But I think that there were some things that we can look at that are going to be positive signs moving forward, but also some things that we're definitely going to need to clean up if we're going to maintain all the goals that this team has for this season.
Yeah, so I think that the best thing that we could do is start from the beginning and go there. But before we do that, I do want to take our first call. It's Adam in Montana, I think, to really set the tone of what everybody feels like. We should hear from one of the fans, so we turn to Adam in Montana.
What's going on, DawgNation? Can we all just take a breath real quick? Soak this loss in, take what we can from it, and move forward. As Brandon said, I am disappointed. I didn't want to see Bama come in and to Athens and take the win. This was the win I wanted. Beyond anything else, I wanted this win. So, Kaylee and Brandon and company, what is it that you guys think that we're missing on both sides of the ball that could elevate us beyond this struggle with Alabama?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that first thing up, just telling everybody to take a moment to breathe, because I remember what this felt like last year when Georgia lost, and in the moment it definitely felt catastrophic, and then you get to the end of the season and realize that it never really mattered anyway. There's still so much season left to play. It still hurts, especially against the opponent, but that is a good thing to remember, that there's still a chance.
Yes, absolutely. With the new college football playoff format, there is a little bit more margin for error. As we saw last year, eventual national champion in Ohio State lost 2 games in the regular season. So there's still room to get in. Plenty of teams last year. Tennessee went with 2 losses, so this one is obviously going to sting, but all the goals that this team has are still in front of them. If we can get back on track and, execute a little bit better down the road. Obviously, there's, plenty to talk about, plenty of things that didn't go our way that we're going to get to, but, take a breath for sure. Just regroup, take it all in, and just understand that we're so capable of getting where we want to go with this season.
Yeah, and Adam, at least from my perspective, and we'll have Rodrigo give his as well, looking at the offense, I really thought whoever won on the ground would end up taking this game away. That was certainly not the case tonight. I was really impressed with the Georgia running back room, with the exception of the Nate Frazier fumble, which I know we're going to get to at some point. But for me, it looked like at moments there was some miscommunication or missed play calls. Gunner looked very confused towards the end, and then we saw the drop pass with Talon Taylor. So I really think just working on the passing game for the offense and just being able to capitalize on momentum and big moments. I have nothing to say about the run game. I thought John T. Bowens played a really good game. Even the plays where they got Zachariah Branch involved definitely seemed to do his job in those moments. On the defensive side, and this is something I want to ask you too, I mean, another slow start for Georgia, obviously, but in 2 games, the defense in the first half is nowhere to have been found. I thought they made adjustments in the second half. At this point, I don't know if it's a lack of preparation or if it's a talent issue when it comes to the Georgia secondary.
Yeah, I think when we talked during the pregame show, 2 of the 3 keys to the game that I had were on the defensive side of the ball, one being the pass rush with 6 or less, and I think we only had 1 sack today. Obviously, sack isn't the only metric that you can measure effective pass rush by, but it just didn't really feel like Ty Simpson was under a lot of pressure in this game. It didn't really feel like we accelerated his internal clock in the pocket, where we were forcing him to make throws early or make errant throws because he was uncomfortable with the pressure coming in. It just didn't really feel like we got to him in the manner that we needed to, and he was comfortable enough back there to go through his reads, find those later routes that were coming open later in the coverage. And so, that was something that I was hoping we were going to see tonight, and we really didn't. And then the other one from the defensive side of the ball was I was hoping we would see some improved play from the secondary. And I feel like in the first half, we didn't really see much improvement. There were some busted coverages where I think I saw a play where Everett was on the sidelines, and he thought that he was going to have safety help over the top, and he just let his receiver run right past him down the sidelines for an easy first down. And just felt like there were some of those plays early on where the secondary was, didn't have all their ducks in a row early in the first half. And obviously they did make some great adjustments in the second half because they shut them out in the second half. And, you would think if you get your Georgia defense to shut out your opponent in the second half, you're going to have a great chance to win the game. And sure enough, we had opportunities in the second half. But, yeah, the defense definitely is going to have to step it up the rest of the season if we're going to get where we want to go.
And later on in the show, we're going to hear from Kirby Smart. One of the things I hope gets asked tonight was, where was Daniel Harris? We saw Ellis Robinson, DeMello Jones, Ellis Robinson making some key mistakes later on in the game. But I want to know what happened to Daniel Harris. I want to go back to Adam's question of how does the offense move forward from here? What do they have to specifically get better at?
Yeah, I mean, something that we had talked about in the pregame show was making sure that we committed to the run, didn't give up on it if early in the game we were getting behind, and sure enough we committed to the run throughout the game. I think we had over 200 rushing yards, and our stable of backs did a tremendous job today. Yards after contact, being patient, waiting for holes to open up. I feel like the rushing attack was there, and I was really happy to see that. The one thing that I was hoping we would see a little bit more of, and something that you had mentioned in pregame, was in a lot of the games where Alabama has struggled, it was because the other team's quarterback rushed for at least 40 yards on the ground, and Gunner had 22 rushing yards on 5 attempts. I was hoping we would see a little bit more of Gunner involved in the run game. He handed off a lot of zone reads, it felt like, during the game, and I was just waiting for that opportunity where he was going to pull it and take off and go scot-free, because the defense was committed to crashing down on our running backs most of the game, and I was just waiting for that pull from Gunner to come, and it just never did. And so I just felt like Gunner's legs didn't make the impact that I was really hoping it was going to have for us tonight.
Yeah, as we mentioned, in all of Alabama's wins under Kaylee DeBoer, they've held quarterbacks to under 25 rushing yards. I thought if Gunner could get in that 40 range, then maybe things would lean in Georgia's way, but we just didn't see Gunner on the ground nearly as much as I thought we would have tonight. Thought they'd give him the go on that, but at the end of the day, you could see from that graphic there, just not the case. Chauncey Bowens does go over 100 yards, though. We've had Frank in Syracuse waiting for a moment, so we're going to go ahead and get to him, and we'll come back. All right, yep, we've got Frank. If you want to go ahead, we got you.
Hey guys, how are you? So I'll be quick. You already touched on some of the other stuff, but really 4 key points for me. We lost on third down on offense and defense. We could not execute on either side of the ball. We lost the turnover battle. 66 penalty yards is too much to give Alabama. And then 11 minutes on time of possession, we gave Alabama extra. So we couldn't stay on the field, and we couldn't keep them off the field. So my question is, whose fault is that on? Where's the execution? Again, back to Adam. Is that coaching? Is that talent? What are we missing to be that elite team this year?
Yeah, a lot of valid points. I think back to Alabama's first drive where they converted 3 third downs that were all 3rd and 5 or longer, and then with 3 minutes left in the first, 7 for 7 on third down, certainly won that battle tonight. Also, you mentioned the penalties. That was something that I brought up in pregame, was that Georgia led the SEC in penalties, not having them. Alabama at the bottom of the ranks really struggled with that this season so far, so I thought that Georgia would win out in the penalty battle. That was not the case. They had some late ones that were really impactful on the outcome. All really valid points. When it comes to the third down, I think it's safe to say at this point that the Georgia defense is not elite or not up to that standard that we're used to seeing. I mean, how does one even begin to get better at those things, and really just how do they move forward after the third down conversion percentage today?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point that he brought up, and I think that those 2 of the points that you brought up are very connected. The third down conversion and time of possession are, in my opinion, going to be directly correlated. If you're consistently converting on third down, you get to keep going, you get to keep your offense out on the field, and that time of possession starts to sway in your favor. So, as you had mentioned, they started the game 7 for 7, on their first 7 third down opportunities. They just kept their drives going. I believe they had 15 first downs in the first half, and that time of possession just gets out of control very quickly. And so when your offense stays on the field, they have playmakers, and their playmakers are going to have more opportunities to make something happen, and it keeps our playmakers off the field. So, yeah, we're going to have to clean up the third downs. I think that it feels to me like it was more of a talent issue than a scheme issue tonight. It just felt like when our corners had one-on-one opportunities, they were getting beat. And, maybe there's ways to scheme to try and help them. Maybe you have to leave more men in coverage to try and help out. Maybe you have to bracket more receivers, especially when you're going against two, what I would consider to be wide receiver ones that Alabama has in Bernard and Williams. You're going to have to bracket. You have to have two guys on top of them every single play. So if you're going to leave other men in one-on-one opportunities, that's fine. But at least you're not going to allow their best playmakers to make the plays on your defense.
Yeah, and they caught a really big break at the beginning with the Ryan Williams wide open drop that touchdown pass. At this point, I'm still secure in what Dalen Everett does just because he's the most experienced player on this entire Georgia team. And I thought he had flashes of good tonight, also flashes where he didn't look like the veteran we know him to be. But based on what you saw from Ellis as well as DeMello, I mean, who's better between the two of them? Because I thought it was Ellis, but after this game, seeing what happened, I'm starting to question that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. And, the only way that we would know for sure is if we get to go out on that practice field and watch them every day. That's when those guys are proving themselves, and that's something that we're not privy to, unfortunately. So it's going to be tough to answer that question. I just hope that we're going to see one of those two guys step up on Saturdays moving forward so we can have a definitive answer to that question, because if we're going to keep having guys cycling in and out, there's going to be some inconsistency. You're going to have a lack of chemistry in the secondary, and that could lead to lingering issues moving forward.
All right, so in a moment we're going to break down some of Georgia's offense, but first we're here at the Georgia Bookstore. I know they're closing, so a little bit too late to come see us now, but we're here after every single home game. If you haven't had the chance to see the renovated bookstore, it looks like an incredibly different place, especially upstairs where we hold this show. There's places for you to sit. You've got TV so you can watch as the games are going on. It's been incredible to just see it in person. So much gear. So when you need stuff for upcoming Georgia games, because there's still a big home schedule ahead, keep the Georgia Bookstore in mind and come see us for every single post-game show. Hopefully Brandon Adams will be back by the next one at Kentucky. If not, I'll be here and we'll be ready to go. But hope you guys come see us. And even when you're in Athens and it's not DawgNation Postgame, then come check out all of the amazing apparel they have, as well as some gadgets that I'm looking at as well. So shout out to the Georgia Bookstore for allowing us to be here, and make sure you stop by anytime that you can, anytime you're in Athens. All right, so I do want to talk about Gunnar Stockton. We mentioned the rushing thing. I definitely wanted to see him more on the ground. The problem is I felt like anytime the Georgia offense got a little swing of momentum, it's like they weren't able to capitalize on that. And I actually don't put a lot of this loss on Bobo. I know that's like what the fans like to turn to, but it just looks like there was a lot of miscommunication between him and the receivers. What did you see from him in the passing game?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't put this on Coach Bobo either. I felt like, for the most part, the right calls were being made at the right times to put our offense in a position to keep moving. And it felt like just a little bit of a lack of execution today. I believe Gunnar only had 20 pass attempts on the night, which, in theory, you would think is a good thing because it means that we were moving the ball well on the ground, which we did. But, as you mentioned, we just didn't capitalize when we had opportunities to. We had that fourth down situation when we had the fourth and short, and we decided to go for it with the hurry up, trying to catch them off guard. I just heard over the intercom, Coach Smart was saying that he would go for it in 10 out of 10 situations. If that was to come up again, he said he would go for it 10 out of 10 times. It was just a matter of whether or not we want to go up tempo or, slow it down and go with a different play call. So, I'm not going to question Coach Smart on that. If he says we're going for it, then we're going for it. But, it just felt like the execution wasn't quite there. But I felt like, if we convert that deep ball over the middle for a touchdown, everyone's singing a different tune, because that's going to be another 60 to 70 yards on Gunnar's stat line. He's going to be over 200 yards for the night. We're going to have another explosive play under our belt, and I know that Georgia fans have really been looking for those explosive pass plays, and we had plenty of those against Tennessee in our last game. Didn't quite have that same level of explosiveness with the pass game tonight, but I wouldn't say it was the play calling. It felt more like it was execution tonight.
Yeah, it wasn't the explosive passes tonight. Instead, it was the explosive runs. Of course, we'll get to the running backs' performance later. With that, though, do want to go ahead and hear more from the fans, so we're going to go ahead and give it to Aaron in Nashville. Aaron, you're on DawgNation Postgame.
Go back to what Rodrigo said a bit ago. Can you hear me? All right.
Oh, yeah, we got you.
Oh, okay. My screen was frozen. Sorry. The pressure on Ty Simpson was not there at all, and it's something you saw too. I would say in the Tennessee game, and so that's just a little frustrating because you can only I feel like our secondary for the most part is doing as good of a job as they can. But if you're not, if you're not bringing pressure to the quarterback and he has all that time to set up a pass, then you can't do much on that, I feel like. But I think the most frustrating thing for me is I felt like this was, to me, I felt like this was a very winnable game. And I think that, and just, your typical plays that go back and forth in football, Ryan Williams misses a pass, and then Taylor misses a pass. And then, those are football things. But I think what stuck out the most to me was I don't hate the call to go for it on fourth down when we're in the red zone. But what I didn't understand was, and maybe I was wrong, maybe Cash Jones was in there before that, but it looked to me like there was a personnel change. You bring him in and try to throw a screen pass on like a no huddle, hurry up offense, and then you run almost the identical play on that third and long. And those are two plays to me, I think, that were very key and just frustrating. But yeah, I think like you started off, or how BA was saying at the beginning, just the narrative of Kirby's 1-9 against Alabama and all that stuff. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if it's maybe I'm overthinking it, but it seems like, especially this game of all, like this, I thought could have been a game that we could have won multiple times if Taylor catches that pass. Even if we didn't go for it and kick that field goal in the red zone, and then we, like, I don't know, it's just questionable personnel changes. Like putting that package with Cash Jones in was, to me, the biggest upsetting moment as a fan to watch. So.
I mean, I certainly understand the point of view of wondering, is this a mental thing? Because there were so many moments where it felt like Georgia could finally run away with it, but ultimately couldn't get the job done. And I think that's what's been the worst part of these last two losses, is that at the end of the day, they were winnable, but when the final score goes up, they don't. And I don't know if it's a mental thing. It's easy to point to that, but certainly they have not been able to figure out this Alabama team, whether it was Nick Saban and now Kalen DeBoer too.
Yeah, and something that I think about with that fourth down play call is typically when Cash Jones comes in the game, I think that everybody's expecting pass. We've seen that, especially last year when Cash Jones got brought in. Typically it was either in pass protection or he's going out for a pass because he's great out of the backfield. And so it was probably a little bit of mind games where we're thinking, we're going to put Cash Jones out there, make the defense think pass, and then run. I'm sure it's just the mind games that are going on with the play callers at the time. But I'm sure that plenty of us would have liked to see McCray go in there. He gave that incredible second effort to get that touchdown at the goal line in the second half. And so if you have that kind of guy in there on a fourth and short situation, even if you're gonna go out of shotgun, if you're not gonna QB sneak or tush push, whatever the case may be, I think that we all would have loved to see him in the game for that play, and that was going to give us the best chance to convert there.
Certainly. All right, we've got somebody in person, finally made it in before close. First off, love the head wear. I already told you that. Introduce yourself to everyone and tell us what you have to say.
Hey guys, I'm Craig from Warner Robins, and I think the theme of this game was missed opportunities. I think if we could say one thing, it was that. And I really think the defense finally got it together and stoned them in the second half. It feels like that we were out of position, like y'all said. But I really think that the missed opportunity with the field goal, we found our running back, y'all. Yeah. Chauncey Bowens. I mean, we got a running back with a 3 on his jersey with 2 of them, and boy, he's great. So I thought Chauncey Bowens played really, really well. I would have loved to have seen Chauncey Bowens get that ball at the end of the game there because he was such a hot hand throughout the whole game. I think we also know that we see that Colby Young is going to fight for those tough yards. I think we see that Zach Branch is going to fight for those tough yards. I feel like we got 3 really great playmakers that should make it tough going forward for other teams. No excuses for this game. No copium here. Obviously, want to beat Bama. I'd love to beat them 50-0. Maybe we will next time. Hats off to them. They played a great first half, but we kind of kicked their butt in the second half on defense. So I think there's some green shoots here. We got a long season ahead. So hopefully we can go and take care of business with Ole Miss, take care of business with Texas. And, Alabama's got a head start on us. Their loss was against a non-conference opponent. So they got a head start on us. Maybe we can get back in the game here and go get them again. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
So there's one quick question I want to ask you before we let you go. First off, thank you for coming up here. All all valid points. One of the things that we were talking about in the press box is how does the fan base feel about Nate Frazier after this game? I just want to hear your thoughts on where things stand with you and your perspective on Frazier.
Well, my son said this, and I really hope this isn't true, but a lot of times something that's sort of a thing that's happened a couple of times or maybe a problem has become kind of a trend. And so we didn't see him, it felt like, again, after that throughout the game. I don't think he got another ball. I feel for the guy because I think he's a hard competitor. I think he's got to work on how to secure the ball a little bit better. It does seem like a trend item now rather than just a one or two thing here. We've seen it a couple times this season. And it was really costly down there near our own end zone. So I'd like to see him play for Georgia, and I'd like to see him get better and be able to hold on to the ball. But I think that's his biggest problem. Otherwise, he's a great playmaker.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, yeah, it's a Nate Frazier was looking to have a breakout season. We just haven't seen that from him. But the difference between this year's team and last year's team is how much depth they have at the running back position, knowing that you've got a guy like Chauncey Bowens as well as Dwight Phillips Jr. and Josh McCray at the goal line. So if we don't see the best of Nate Frazier this season, it's not the end of the world because you've got guys who can go in and make those big plays for you. But it would have been nice to see a guy like Nate Frazier, who we know has so much potential, make a difference in this game. But at the end of the day, it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, Frazier is such an explosive guy. I think he's probably our most dangerous player out of the backfield, where if you're going to pick one guy that you would expect to hit that home run and, rattle off that big play, I would think that it's Nate Frazier. Now, I think that Bowens and Phillips are maybe, trying to make me eat my words here because we've seen some explosive plays from them as well early on in this season. But I really love Nate Frazier. I think he's a really talented guy. I think that, he is overall our best player. We just got to work on the ball security. I remember when I was here, Coach Del McGee would always say ball security, job security. I know it's not new to anybody in the football world, but you've got to hold on to that football, I don't think we did see him the rest of the game, which is unfortunate, but I think that Nate is probably aware of that as well. He's aware that he can't put the ball on the ground in a critical game like this, so I just trust that he's going to get back to work. He's going to get back in the lab this week, work on his ball security, and try to return to form and be that impact player that we need him to be for the rest of this season.
All right, so in a minute we're going to hear from Jeff Sentell, but there's one more thing I wanted to comment about what he said, and that was the second half adjustments from the Georgia defense. I thought they looked like a more polished defense in the second half, and I think part of that was just that they needed rest because Georgia goes 3 and out on that first drive, then the defense is on for a ton of time. Georgia gets off the field quick again, has to come back on the field, out there for a long time. Alabama had that really long drive, took up a lot of time, and then when Georgia finally does score, it's in 3 plays. So that's a lot of fatigue for the defense early on. I think halftime might have been one of the better things that happened to them just because they had a second to breathe.
Yes, absolutely. When we had our kickoff return team run out to start the game, I was like, oh, man, this doesn't really feel great. No. They won the coin toss. They deferred, which means our offense is going out there first. I would have much preferred if our defense was going out there first, could get a big stop to open up the game and then give the ball to our offense with the crowd, enthused and ready to go. But that wasn't how it worked out. And so really it was a little bit of feeling of uneasiness when we lost the coin toss to start the game because I know that's not how Coach Smart wants to start. He wants to send his defense out there and get a big stop to start off the game, and that's not how it went. And so it's unfortunate, but, I think there were definitely some signs throughout the game that things may not have gone our way even as early as the coin toss.
So we've got Jeff Sentell on standby. We're going to hear from him in just a moment. We're going to take a quick break. This is DawgNation Postgame.
Hey, DawgNation, it's Brandon Adams, the host of DawgNation Daily here at Cercheros. And when I'm ready to eat, I want to eat something that I feel like was made fresh for me. And that's what the friendly folks at Cercheros do each and every day. In fact, let me give you a little bit of a taste of what that looks like right now. So I'll do a flour tortilla with Southwest rice, black beans. May I have steak, please? Cheese, and some pico, and some corn. I would love that grilled, absolutely. Can't beat the taste of those fresh grilled toppings added on. Jalapenos, some guac. The guac is free add-on here at Cercheros. And then I'll do some Cercheros sauce too, please. Looks great. And this football season, I want you to think of Cercheros for your tailgate watching and game day party need. In fact, this year, DawgNation with Cercheros is going to give away the ultimate game day party. You go to the website, DawgNation.com/tailgate. You can register for your chance to win the ultimate game day party, courtesy of Cercheros.
I get it. We all want to do our research online before buying anything. But if you're in the market for a hot tub,
Trust me, you'll be glad you came into Georgia Spa Company to see their inventory in person.
you just got to get your hands on them, see them, envision which model will fit your home and your lifestyle best. Talk to one of our consultants who, I promise you, will bring up considerations you never thought to consider. I'd also recommend taking a test soak.
So come on into Georgia Spa Company. I promise you'll be glad you did.
If you're thirsting for It's Only Tuesday, that meeting should have been an email, and really need something to go your way level of refreshment, we definitely have that. When you're feeling the heat, Circle K makes your day.
This is DawgNation Postgame, brought to you by Cercheros, Royal Caribbean, Georgia Spa Company, Circle K, and the UGA Bookstore.
All right, welcome back, DawgNation. This is DawgNation Postgame. I'm Kaylee Mansell with Rodrigo Blankenship. If you're just now joining us, Brandon Adams currently on pitch count for the week, so he is standing by, but is limited to what he can do at the moment. So we're just going to try and do our best to fill in for him the best we can. I know you're used to seeing his face. I am too, but still trying to capture the mood of the moment. And hopefully our good friend Jeff Sentell will help us do that. Also want to give a quick reminder that you can call in, give us your thoughts. We want to hear from the fans, so you can call 678-645-DAWG. That's DAWG. Number in full, 678-645-3294. So give us a call, tell us your thoughts. But first, we're going to hear from our friend Jeff Sentell, who was on the field tonight. You got to experience the highs and the lows of what the Georgia fans were going through. You know, what was your overall take on the atmosphere, and how do you think people were when they were leaving that stadium?
Hey guys, good evening. I guess I can say, Rodrigo and Kaylee, you're officially baptized in the DawgNation Postgame family, because you're chopping up one of these with us after an Alabama loss. These are probably the worst ones that Brandon and I have had to do over the years. Kaylee, to answer your question, I always like to mix into some perspective with all this, because everybody's going to go, they're going to focus on the field goal. I'm sure you guys have already talked about that, or the lack thereof, the 4th and 1 call. They're going to talk about all that stuff. Here's some perspective. I was making my way back to the press area, and there was a young lady. She looked like she's about 16, 17 years old. And she simply said, "Oh my, I've never seen Georgia lose at home before." And that kind of strikes me with all the, hey, we got to report about this, we got to talk about this, kind of going through your mind right there. Let me bring something to the table, and I'm not trying to scoot the post-game video with Kirby, because I'm sure we'll have that for you guys very soon, but it is a major talking point. And people that are listening in, I want to kind of try to bring you this news as quickly as possible. Kirby said on that play, this is what he told the media scrum afterward, that they had decided on 3rd down, if they got any yards, they were going to go for it on 4th down. And so it was predetermined that they got yards on 3rd down, that they were going to go for it on 4th down and not kick the field goal. I'm sure everybody's talking about the play. Everybody's talking about Cash Jones. Why not Chauncey Bowens? Why not just get it up there with a gunner and sneak it instead of getting in the gun? These are all valid football points. I think my overarching take, Kaylee, and I don't know if you guys have talked about it yet, is this is magnified just kind of how young a football team Georgia is. Now, listen, they're talented. They're just as talented as anybody in the country. But there were some growing pains today. The pass that Talon Taylor should have caught, Talon Taylor will tell you that he should have caught that every time. And he's going to catch that a lot of times, almost every time in his Georgia career. There's the drop there. That was a backbreaker. And then you've got Georgia kind of shuffling. You see the 2 freshmen on the offensive line on the right side. There are a lot of things there where, heck, Georgia's rated really great. But there's a lot of things where they've got just a young, inexperienced football team. Kirby said afterward, they're going to grow, they're going to get better, and they're going to play better out of this.
All right, really quick. We're actually going to hear from Kirby directly what he said. You mentioned the baptism. You want to talk about baptism by fire. That is exactly what this moment feels like. But the good thing is we're starting at the bottom, so there's only room to grow and go up to the top if I have to do this again. Hopefully we'll be talking about a win. But for now, the 4th down decision that everybody's had something to say about, let's hear what Kirby Smart had to say.
Yeah, we were 3rd and 4, I think. We had decided previous to that if we gained anything, we were going for it. We were going to probably kick a field goal if we didn't get anything. So there's a thing called sequencing, where you sequence plays to try to set up and know that you're going to go for it. So we felt like we're going to go for it if we got anything, and we did. We got it down to 4th and 1, and that play has been really successful for us. I think we hit Tennessee on it 3 times for conversion. We'd run it earlier in the night and run it for conversion, and we missed a block that you got to make, and they ran through and made a really good play, made a great play to stop it. But I'd do that 10 out of 10 times in terms of going for it. The decision is whether you go for it with tempo or not, and we felt like tempo had been really good for us throughout the year. Well, it was a different play now. We're talking about 3rd and 4. So we're not talking about the other. We're talking about the tempo play is who's in the game. So the decision is, do you stop, slow down, think about it, let them set their cleats in the ground, let them get everything they want, or do you try to hit them quickly? And we have a philosophy we believe in. I mean, we do it every Tuesday and every Wednesday at our practices. We blow a siren blows, we go as fast as we can, and it's 3rd and 1. And the defense has to do it, which we had a big stop on them, and the offense has to do it. And that's a play that I believe in and believe it should work. It just so happens he was in on the 3rd and 4. So he was in on the 4th down too.
All right, Rodrigo, so here's my take on all of this. When you take a loss that's as tough as this one, the first question if a fan wants to know is why? What happened? You want to finally point to something that says, you know what, it's this one right here, but I thought that the Georgia offense had moments, especially towards the end, where they could score. So, yeah, it's easy to look at this and say, well, that was the issue, but I don't put it all on that play calling decision.
No, I don't either. And, I think that when we look at, how everybody can improve from this game, one thing that I'm going to be thinking about moving forward is maybe the coaches will learn from this situation in the future. If we're going to sequence our 3rd and 4th down plays, maybe when we're rolling up against Ole Miss and we get a situation like this, maybe when we get to that 4th down play, we're going to go with a freeze call. See if we can get the defense to jump off sides and give us that 4th down instead of, having to go through with our play. Maybe we don't necessarily have the best personnel in there to run that play. Maybe we go with a freeze call, get the defense to jump, and then we get a free 1st down, and then we're not even thinking about it anymore. So that's something that I'm going to be looking at as far as a coaching point of view is, maybe coaches will be able to learn from that and be able to approach that better in the future. But, if Coach Smart said that we're going to go for it, if we make any yards, we're going to go for it, then, Boss Man says that's what's going to happen. So I trust that those decisions will continue to be made in the future. You want to beat Alabama, sometimes you got to be a little bit aggressive, so I understand it from that point of view. Obviously, if I was on the sidelines, I'm going to be like, Coach Smart, send me out there, let me knock it down, let's tie up the game and have a brand new game for the last few minutes of the 4th quarter. But that's all right. I'm sure we're going to see situations like this, show up again down the road, and I trust that the guys are going to learn from this and be able to execute the next time we see it.
All right, so we've got Jody and Macon who has a lot to say about this topic. So, Jody, I know you've been waiting for a while. I apologize for that, but we want to go ahead and hear your thoughts.
Okay, great. Thanks for taking my call. First thing I want to know is, when did Kirby become so complacent? And what's happened to his fire and passion for the game itself? Because it seems he does not want to make any changes with Mike Bobo or Glenn Schumann as those coordinators. And it's like Kirby used to have passion back when Stetson Bennett and all those guys were playing for championships. No one is afraid of Mike Bobo's play calls. There's not a team in this country on Division I that's afraid of Mike Bobo. Why does Kirby not acknowledge that?
Yeah, Jody, we hear your thoughts. I know a lot of fans feel this way about this particular topic. I think that the passion is probably still there, but how you coach is really dependent on the team that you have. There's a lot of young guys on this team. There's been a lot of injuries so far this season, so I feel like the way in which you scheme the plan and how you change up the personnel is really just depending on the players that you have at that moment in time. I feel like you could probably speak to this a little bit better than I can, just being a player yourself and understanding what kind of coach you're getting based on just the talent and the veteran experience that you have.
Yeah, so I'll try and answer your question as best I can, but I've got 2 different trains of thought here. So the first one that I'm going to go with is, everyone wants to look at Coach Bobo and, point the finger at him. And part of it is I think that we got spoiled with Coach Monken. If I want to ask you, where is Coach Monken right now? He's in the NFL, and that's because he was exceptional at his job. And, not everyone may be as good of an offensive coordinator as Coach Monken. He proved that he was such an elite coordinator that he deserved to be back coaching at the absolute highest level. And now he's with the Baltimore Ravens, and they average close to 35, 40 points a game, And so Coach Bobo may not necessarily be the coordinator that we were spoiled with Coach Monken, but I still think that he's a good coordinator. I think that he's good enough to do the job that we need if we're going to accomplish all of our goals this season. So I wouldn't necessarily be so quick to point the finger at Coach Bobo. I mean, honestly, when I look across the college football landscape, I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily scared of a coordinator. I would be more scared of the personnel that are executing that coordinator's game plan. So, I don't think that I'm really scared of any coordinators, so to speak. I'm more scared of the players that are going out on the field and are actually bringing those plays to life. And then the other point that I had is, as a former player interacting with Coach Smart, Coach Smart isn't going to coach the same way for every single player. Obviously, being a specialist is a very unique position, but, it was interesting to see how my relationship changed with Coach Smart from when I first got there to when I left. And, part of that was Coach Kevin Butler, came back and was finishing his undergrad degree, and he was kind of our kicking coach in 2016 and 2017. And Coach Butler and Coach Smart, I think, had to work together to figure out what is the best way to coach the specialist, because it's just a different animal. And I think that Coach Smart has probably seen, as you said, when you've got different guys each year, there's a little bit different way that you're going to have to go about coaching that team. And so when you've got a young roster, maybe they're not necessarily going to respond in the same way to a certain coaching style that more veteran players would. So I think the passion is still there. I see Coach Smart on the sidelines lighting it up every game. So I think that the passion is still there. It just has to be placed at the right times and with the right guys.
I think you bring up a really good point about Todd Monken, because Bobo or somebody else, you're coming into a really vulnerable position because Todd Monken set the bar so high, and you're always going to be in comparison to what he did. I don't know if anybody's ever going to have success like Todd Monken did in such a short time. So coming into that position, whoever it was, nobody's going to be as satisfied as they were with Monken because he left while he was on top. I want to continue the conversation of the offense with Jeff, who, again, has been on standby with us. Thank you for waiting patiently. I want to talk about the Nate Frazier fumble, you being on the sidelines. Did you see a conversation between him and Kirby Smart happen after that play? And then on top of that, can you give us your thoughts on the running back performances as a whole? Because I thought that was the highlight of the game on the Georgia end.
Yeah, I think you guys touched on it. I know we've kind of mentioned this in some DawgNation forums before, but one of the things that Nate struggled with in high school was fumbling. I don't know if that's the typical DawgNation fan knows that. He was on a team with another talented 5-star that was 1 year younger than him, and he was never really the full starter at his high school. And part of that was due to another equally talented guy. So. It's one of the things you've heard about. The one thing about Nate is we saw this last year is ball security. And I liked Rodrigo's point. I heard Dell McGee say that a bunch of times. Ball security is job security. I think Georgia found its kind of tailback right now, at least. The hot tailback. I thought Chauncey looked great. Chauncey gives you a little bit more of the pretty hard to bring down, a 220-pound guy. And, one of the things that's about coaching, and I want to kind of stress this, is, man, Georgia is a juggernaut program. This fan base, people that cover this team, they're used to Georgia kind of pulling these out. The difference is, a lot of times you're not turning to a Kendall Milton that's been there 3 or 4 years, or you're not turning to, some guys like maybe even a Trevor Etienne that had been a veteran back as well. Every time somebody mess up, this is a little snapshot. Coaches get frustrated. They do. But then they immediately, I saw Kirby Smart over and over tonight. When Ellis Robinson didn't make a play, brought him over the sidelines, talked to him, correction, teach him, puts his arm around him, loves on him, and says, hey, man, you're going to get that one next time. Same thing with Talon when he dropped the ball. I mean, one of those things that you look at it and, Georgia opened up the door early for them basically with the fumble. You can't turn the ball over against a really good team. But the other things that strike me about this game is, folks, Georgia just couldn't get Alabama off the field. That's really it. It's tackling. Let's remember the linchpin of this program, the foundations of this program is defense. They make those stops. They get the ball back to the offense and let the quarterback and the special teams, the field goal kicker, place kicker try to pull magic out of the hat. And right now, perimeter tackling, it seemed like a lot of times DawgNation fans were frustrated. I saw it on my social media feeds that Alabama's offense was just Ty Simpson run around, somebody will get open and kind of go find him. And that's kind of the way the game went back and forth. I thought the crowd was good. Maybe, I don't know. I think the crowd could have been a little bit louder than what I thought coming in, because I remember Notre Dame years ago, and I remember Tennessee a couple years ago. And I guess it's one of those things. And I guess I keep coming back to this, is that these are a lot. You know, when Kirby Smart said something, he really gave us the answers to the season at the beginning of the year when he said, man, we're so young. Everybody here is 60% of the roster, basically, and that's an approximation. Has only been one spring, or at the most 2 springs here, or the turnover is there. So there's a lot of guys being thrust into different roles. I mean, football is a game of, you got to learn these things, especially against a team like Alabama. Last year's offensive line, you had a Tate Ratledge on there, you had a Dylan Fairchild on there, you had, you know, Jared Wilson, who was a great starter for 1 year, but had been with Georgia since 2021. And now, what's different about tonight? Dontrell Glover going to be a great Bulldog going forward. Juan Gaston going to be a great Bulldog going forward. Those guys were playing high school football last year, and it's one thing to be talented, but it's another thing to be experienced and seasoned going against 21 and 22-year-old men. I think with a lot of things in athletics, you got to look and see how this team gets better over the course of the season. And one of the things Dalen Everett said is he lamented the fact that third downs were a problem, tackling was a problem, but he didn't even want to hear about this. Like the natural progression of thought was, hey, look at Georgia last year. Struggled against the same Alabama team, looked bad defensively, couldn't pull it out late, back and forth game. And then they also lose another one to Ole Miss. Somehow they go back and win the SEC championship. But Dalen, I kind of liked his attitude where he's like, man, I don't want to talk about any of that. We got to protect our house, and we didn't protect our house tonight. He said that was last year. He said, I don't want to think about any of that right now. I know it's a long season. We got a bunch of games, but the word was frustrated about what happened tonight. And when he's one of your senior leaders and one of your team captains, I like hearing that out of a player. CJ Allen was much the same way, very frustrated, getting tired of hearing all that stuff about Alabama. But CJ said, you know what? I can't speak on any of that. Alabama and Georgia have been playing for a long time, and CJ Allen's only been here for 3 years.
So, Jeff, a lot of valid points. We're going to circle back to those. A tale as old as time, at least it feels that way at this point, has been the slow starts with Georgia. Typically, we see a second-half Dogs. We saw a better second-half Dogs, not the ones that we're used to seeing, but slow starts again. Georgia fans have become accustomed to it at this point, and rightfully so. Kirby Smart was questioned about this earlier tonight. So let's hear from Kirby Smart about the slow starts that Georgia had.
I don't have an explanation for them. I mean, not starting well on defense. I can't say that it's, you know, it's not really both sides of the ball. The kicking game, we've made some plays. Offensively, we've made plays. Defensively, two games we didn't, but the 2 better opponents we played, we did not execute well in the first, and it's really frustrating because we show we can in the second half. We show we can in the second and third quarter with Tennessee, and with this game, it was more second half.
All right, so he basically described the feeling of every single Georgia fan. We know it's frustrating. With that, we're going to go ahead and take our next call from a Georgia fan. We're going to head to Joshua in Savannah. Again, thank you so much for your patience. Glad to have you. Joshua, what did you think about tonight's game? Joshua, are you with us? All right, so luckily we've got another Joshua on standby. This is going to be Joshua in South Carolina. Joshua from South Carolina, we come to you now.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, good deal. First off, I want to shout out to Rodrigo.
Do we still have Joshua? Okay, guess not. We're going to go hopefully 1 for 3 here, which is a great day in baseball. Next, we're going to go to Bo in Tifton. Bo here in the state of Georgia. Bo, we'd like to hear your thoughts on tonight's game. Okay, so it does not look like calls are working at the moment. Of course, you can comment what you think in our DawgNation chat. If I can get some service here, I'm definitely going to look through those. Jeff, coming back to you, I want to talk about Talon Taylor because you were really high on him coming into this season. Georgia's first 5-star wide receiver since George Pickens. We knew it was going to take some time for him to adapt just coming out of the northeastern part of the country. We saw the drop pass from him. Yes, you can look at it and say that would have been the game-winning touchdown, but also to. We saw drop passes on the Bama side tonight. Maybe you can say that number 11 is cursed, but as someone who has watched Talon Taylor play a lot, can you just explain a little bit about what it is that made him a 5-star and how he grows moving forward?
Pretty simple. The Georgia Bulldogs are a program that it's show me and I'll play you, not I'll play you and you can show me. The reason why Talon Taylor was in that spot is because he is impressed since he got into Athens, and he has looked like a bona fide future major SEC contributor since he arrived in Athens. And the reason why he had that call, the reason why he was in there is because the coaches trusted him. They see his great talent. I still believe, I'm going to put 10 toes down here for Talon. I believe he's going to make that number shine unless he takes number 1 next year when Zachariah Branch goes on to the NFL. It's one of those things you want to put the ball in the hands of your best players, your best playmakers, and certainly Talon's going to be that. I think it is frustrating because everybody, it sounds like the things you do, and I think the guy with the nice pants earlier on one of your segments that joined you guys from the bookstore used the word copium. But it is true, man, especially when you sit there and you go, there's not one single play that defines the game. There's just not, especially between these two teams that are so stocked with talent. You saw that tonight. I thought, by and large, I don't know. One of the things about this game, the narratives will be flush on social media. They're already there right now. They'll be on message boards, especially when everybody rewatches the game at like 8 o'clock in the morning. I think the thing that seems most un-Georgia right now is what Kirby Smart touched on. They've played 2 teams of SEC stock, and the defense hasn't answered the bell, especially in the first halves of games. He mentioned slow starts for a defense. And yeah, you can sit there and go, well, Georgia basically played them differently. Dalen Everett said, we just changed things up and went after them. And that's how they kind of stunted Alabama in the second half. Alabama doesn't get any points in the second half. And, that's one of those things where it's kind of weird how Georgia has these halves, like Jekyll and Hyde halves with Alabama. But, I just wonder, everybody's going to write their game stories. Everybody's going to look at this. And, one of the things I wanted to know is, like, do they notice if Georgia prepares any differently for Alabama? And I don't think that's the case. I mean, I think somehow this team, when they face Alabama, they can never play their best football. I mean, even tonight, I think Gunnar Stockton had a decent game. He had a solid game. Did he walk on water? No, but there were a lot of times when, his number was called and he moved the ball forward and he made some big shots. Like that big play to Zachariah Branch where he almost got snapped in half, but converted into a 32-yard gain. And I thought, all right, this is where it happens. This is where it starts rolling. It's just kind of one of those things. I don't know how you guys feel about it, but maybe this is me having years on the beat and covering this team for so long. We've reached the point now where nobody thought one loss was going to derail the season. Most people that follow Georgia said probably the SEC champion is going to end up with 2 losses. So what does this actually mean? It means the margin for error is a little slimmer now in terms of getting to where you want to be in the playoffs and perhaps the SEC championship. I do like the way Georgia comes out of this one a little bit with maybe a guy that they can depend on a little bit more at the running back position. Because, again, Kirby Smart gave us all the answers to the test at the beginning of the year. He says, I remember hearing him say this over and over, for us to be the team that we need to be and to be as good as we need to be this year, we're going to have to run the football. And I think that's what they need to evolve in.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like we've either seen a really strong run game or a really strong pass game. I don't feel like there's been a game yet where we've seen a well-balanced Georgia offense. I do want to go back to one of the things that you said on the Georgia defense, and I hope that you can expand on this too, is I think before the season, if you would have told me that the issue so far in Georgia's last 2 games would have been the Georgia defense, I would have told you that you were crazy because it's a Glenn Schumann, Kirby Smart defense. They recruit so well, specifically on the defensive side. Now, when I look at the common thing between the past 2 games, very similar offenses. Georgia has the bye week, so I thought they would be able to make improvements. Specifically for the secondary, yes, they struggled a lot in the first half. It was very evident. It was very frustrating, but I saw a lot of adjustments in the other half of the game that made me feel like, okay, you know what? We're finally getting somewhere. But what was not evident at all in these last 2 games was Georgia's pass rush. No pressure on Ty Simpson at all. And we knew from that first game and the loss against Florida State, that's where Ty Simpson really struggled. So I don't know how how the Georgia pass rush moves forward from here on out, but clearly that's one of the big parts of the team that needs to quickly improve because it's going to face similar offenses moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. And a couple of points that I wanted to get to that Jeff had talked about earlier. He talked about the fans not quite being at their best. And I think one of the reasons why maybe they weren't is because of the slow start that we had. You know, we get the ball first on offense. We have to punt. They get the ball. They go down and score a touchdown. And then everyone in the stands is like, here we go again, you know. And I think that was a reason that maybe the fans were a little bit deflated early on in the game, is because it feels like the same game is replaying right before our eyes. And so, you know, it's hard for the fans to stay engaged when we already know what our history is with this specific team in the past. We know that we can never get over the hump, and then we get off to another slow start, and it's just very deflating for the fans. And, I mean, I think that's how it is because that's how I felt, and I'm sure that that's how it was for 70, 80,000, however many Georgia fans were at this game today. I know there were a few Tide fans because I heard them chirping as I made my way over to the bookstore after the game. So it is tough, you know, that we really want to make sure that the fans are going to be engaged from start to finish to give us the best chance to win. And I do think that they had an impact at some points because we saw some false starts from Alabama, which was nice to see. But, you know, I do think that is probably why the fans maybe didn't feel like they were at their best in this game, is because it felt like we're seeing the same story play out right before our eyes. And then another thing that Jeff had talked about is, you know, you're not going to look at one play and say that one play defined the whole outcome of the game. But when I've been in NFL locker rooms, every head coach has said to some extent, it's not one play, but it is probably 4 to 5 plays that are the game-defining plays. And I think that you could go back and probably count where those plays were throughout the game. We had the fumble early on. We had the drop touchdown pass. We had that 4th and short situation where we don't convert. And I'm sure you could go through and, you know, have your choice of maybe 2 to 3 other plays on offense or defense. You could say it was that conversion that Alabama had where they were able to finally go in and kneel out the clock. They had that 3rd down conversion where if we get the stop, we're going to have a chance to maybe get, you know, a game-tying field goal right there at the end. But they convert on that pass to be able to kneel out the clock. So there's your 4th play, and I'm sure you could go back and see 1 or 2 other key plays, and that summed up the game for us today. So, you know, just wanted to make sure that we got to those couple points that Jeff had brought up. But, yeah, it's frustrating at the end of the day, but, you know, like he said, I think that we're feeling okay coming out of this game. There's going to be a lot that we can take away from this game to learn from, and hopefully will allow us to be a more improved team as we get to the rest of our SEC slate.
All right, so Jeff, we've held on to you long enough. Want to come to you for one final point, whether it's expanding on anything that Rodrigo just said or, you know, maybe a little optimism about how Georgia can progress moving forward.
There's some kind of coaching points because Georgia, as a man, after a loss, when they're trying to figure out when they meet the media, like, hey, this is what went wrong, they're like, well, we'll find out when we go to the doctor on Monday, when they break down and they see where are the corrections, where do they learn from or whatever. Sometimes they do it a little earlier. But the things that, to me, and we've done a great job of kind of, you know, framing up this thing and going around the thing. I just wanted to see maybe more of Noah Thomas today. I'm really enthused by how Colby Young's coming along. He looks like probably the best wide receiver Georgia has, especially against a premium elite opponent. Maybe London Humphreys is a guy I need to see more of. Noah Thomas need to see more of. But I think the one thing that's glaring where we're at now through 4 games of the season is I don't know if Georgia's going to feed the tight ends like it used to. Or what it's had a lot of success with over the last few years. Like Lawson Lucky's a great player. Oscar Delp's a great player. I'd heard a lot about Elias Williams, the 6'7", 250-pound, really freak that's was a number 1 tight end in the country last year. It's one of those things, Kaylee, we got to make sure, you know, maybe we're half full people or whatever, because maybe Georgia has spoiled us by covering us for getting a chance to cover them for so many years. Georgia lost on the scoreboard today, but they did take 2 wins today on the recruiting trail. They took 2 offensive linemen. Folks, if anybody knows, sees any holes in Georgia that they could use an offensive lineman or an offensive tackle or 2, well, they got 2 today, along with a lot of really goodwill and a lot of good buzz from all those recruits. Here's a little sneak peek from some video I know Cody Chaffins has. I'm going to write about. There was something pretty cool today about seeing Luke Bryan give Jared Curtis a hug on the sidelines. That just seems very Nashville to me a little bit, but it also seems very Athens to me a little bit. At the end of the game, I made sure I swiveled around and saw what the recruiting bleachers looked like. And it looked like to me, there were some really ticked off Georgia commits that were going to be like, man, that's not going to happen when I get on the field at Georgia. And that's kind of what you always want to see, them already feeling invested into the program after Georgia loses a tough one.
All right, Jeff, thanks for sticking with us. I'm excited to go back and review the visitors list from tonight on our Wednesday night show before the hedges. So thanks for sticking around and always giving us the glass half full approach.
Hey, Rodrigo, man, appreciate you hanging out. Now, I know this is the equivalent of a 79-yard field goal, but you're going pretty well with Kaylee right now. It's straight down the middle. We just got to get it over the crossbar. It looks pretty good so far.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And we've had a great time talking with you today and look forward to chatting with you as well the rest of the season.
All right, so I'm more of a Kirby Smart kind of girl. It's not half full, half empty. It's just half a glass of water. It's all the same at the end of the day. We're going to take some more calls. Final three. Let's go ahead and go to Bo in Tifton. Bo in Tifton, if you're with us, give us your thoughts from tonight.
Yeah, so start out by letting you know I'm not trying to sound like one of those fans that's just jumping the gun. You know, Kirby Smart's obviously objectively a great coach. But at what point are we as a perennial program going to start holding our coach to the same accountability level that, per se, Ohio State does? Ryan Day loses 2 games to Michigan, and he's held to the fire. Kirby's 1-7. It literally feels like it's a physical impossibility to get over the hump of Alabama. And most people wanted to say it's Nick Saban, but it looks like Kalen DeBoer is Kirby Smart's daddy 2.0. And it's not really something that I really want to get comfortable with. I don't want to say things like, it's okay, we got a lot of running backs. You know, so who cares that Nate Frazier is fumbling the ball? How much are we paying him? Thank the Lord and everybody, we're paying him millions of dollars to go out there and fumble the ball against Alabama. So I just want to know, at what point are we going to start holding Kirby a little bit accountable? By no means is it time to let him go or anything close to that. But it's time to start saying, hey, Kirby, you don't walk on water in the state of Georgia. It's time to start winning some of the big games, specifically against Alabama.
All right, but we're going to try to circle back to that, but we want to make sure that we hear from everybody, so we're going to go ahead and take the next 2 calls. We're going to go back to Josh in South Carolina. Josh in South Carolina, I know we tried to get you the first time. Glad you called back in. What do you have to say? All right, we got to move on to the next one. Sorry about that, Josh. All right, let's go to Chad in Americus. Personally love Lake Blackshear up there. So, Chad, what do you have for us?
Well, I want to go back to that last caller that talked about Kirby Smart. Okay, first of all, we all should put our shoes under our bed every night. So the next morning, you got to get up and go to work, and you got to get on your knees to get those shoes out. First of all, you thank the good Lord for all the blessings he has given you, but you better think that we have a diehard coach who started out as a coordinator of Valdosta and other places, because we will never, ever have a true Georgia blue blood like we do that is a diehard Bulldog. So I didn't like what the other caller had to say. So what? Look at his overall record. Come on. The reason I called, though, is where it goes back to the other one. I remember the days when we lined up in an I formation. Now we line up one back. Where are our tight ends? We got 2. We got the best recruiting group of tight ends. Did we make a fake I formation, roll out, hit a tight end across the middle all game, all year? That's my only thing. I'm not downgrading Bobo. Everybody's talking about the drop passes. That's football. They dropped the pass. We dropped the pass. We got beat. Obviously, our defense didn't play good. We got some improvement. But why are we not using our tight ends more efficiently is my question.
All right, so I'm going to say one final thought, and then I believe we're going to have BA come on. He's going to finish it out with Rodrigo, do SEC through, and then just final thoughts. I want to touch on the Kirby Smart situation, and I understand why it's easy to feel this way because Kirby Smart has accomplished pretty much everything that you can do as a coach at this point, but just hasn't been able to put up the numbers on Bama. But the grass isn't always greener. Think about Dan Mullen, his quick success with Florida, and the fans pushed him out of there, and they're in a worse situation now with Billy Napier and their ADs having to make statements that, hey, we're sticking with this guy. Looks like they might be plotting from the inside to get him out. So there's no guy out there that's better for this job. If you could go find one and convince me otherwise, I'll take it. But this is the guy that you want, somebody who went to the University of Georgia, left a really desirable coordinator position to come here and take this coaching job, and has taken this program to levels that we've never seen before. So it's frustrating when he can't get the win over Alabama, but what more can you really do? You've won 2 national championships. He's been so loyal to the program, kept them at the top of the recruiting ranks. And, unfortunately, it's just the game of football at the end of the day. Somebody has to win and somebody has to lose. Yeah, it's been a reoccurring theme, the losses to Bama, but also, too, if there's anybody that can bounce back and make the adjustments from this loss and carry Georgia to do what we've seen them do in the past, it's Kirby Smart. Anybody else in the world would take him over the coach they have now. So I prefer to keep him. I get the frustration, but like I said, it all goes back to the fact that the grass is not greener on the other side. So that's going to be my final takeaway from all this. Going to give it back to Brandon. He started. He should finish. This is his show. Rodrigo, it's been a pleasure to be able to do this with you.
And Rodrigo,
Absolutely.
thank you so much. Appreciate that. We'll let you get ready to bounce out of here, too. Always appreciate your analysis. It's always fantastic. I can probably go without headphones here just to wrap it up. Yeah, I appreciate that. Rodrigo, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate that. Great stuff, as always.
Yes, sir.
Good stuff from Rodrigo Blankenship. And I'll just finish up by saying this. I think the concern that I would have looking back on all this, and obviously there'll be time to talk about the decision there on 4th down, as Rodrigo has said, hey, you kick that, you tie the game, or having Cash Jones in. There's going to be plenty of analysis on that. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the emotion of the moment about the repeated losses to Alabama, obviously too much to this one opponent. We all understand that. I would say that my biggest concern is when you think about the defensive struggles in the first half, reminiscent of defensive issues to begin the game against Tennessee, and just hard time getting off the field on 3rd down and then not able to capitalize on moments in the second half. Rodrigo, I guess the final thought for me is I think that Georgia's got a lot of improvement it needs to do, needs to undertake if it wants to be an upper-tier team, if it wants to be the kind of team that can compete for a championship. We know that Georgia's a good team, but Georgia wants to compete for championships, and I think it's still a mystery right now if Georgia can count itself among the small handful of teams that can really compete for a national championship. It's what they do after this loss against Kentucky next Saturday, going on the road to Auburn after that. It's what they do in these subsequent weeks that I think is going to determine that. And when you take your first loss early, it puts more pressure on you for the other games that are coming up here. That's obviously the story on this. And I think there's still a lot to be. I think there's a lot left to be determined about just how good this Georgia team is going to be.
Yes, absolutely. And I think when we look at trends across college football in recent years, it's better to lose early if you're going to lose. And I feel like because of NIL, because of the way that the transfer portal has been restructured, the competitiveness of teams across college football as a whole is higher. Teams are better now than they've ever been, and so it's going to be so difficult, especially in the SEC. It's going to be so difficult to go undefeated because you're going to play against quality opponents every single week. So, we had our caller earlier talking about how he's frustrated because we're going to look at this loss and just try and look at the silver lining of, well, we got great running backs. I don't think anyone is sitting here and is happy about this result.
Sure.
We're not walking out of here with a good taste in our mouth, and we need our fans to continue to be passionate about this team.
That's
and I
right.
need the players to continue to be passionate about it as well. I don't think that these players are going to be satisfied with this result. Obviously, they're going to be licking their wounds this week. But I think that this game is going to be a great opportunity for them to learn and to be able to grow, not only from a schematic standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint. This is their first loss of the season, so this is the first time that they're going to go back to that locker room after the game, and they're not going to be happy about what happened on that field. So I think that this team has the personnel that we need to be able to do great things that we want to do. But as you said, we're going to have to learn along the way. We've got some really tough opponents coming up. I know that, Auburn, is going to be a really tough opponent. Kentucky's going to be a tough opponent. We've got Texas and Ole Miss coming up later in the year. So we've got plenty of tough opponents that are going to continue to test this team, and hopefully they use this game in the right way to respond.
We normally close out the show by cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. To be honest with you, I'm not quite in the mood to do that here right now. So let me just say this. When my voice is not working, when Georgia's losing, I dream about being on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. I'd love to be sailing the Caribbean right now, enjoying those coastal breezes. And obviously, we have a great Dawg Nation cruise coming up in April. Here's what I can tell you. Whether it be Utopia of the Seas for those 3 and 4 night sailings, the brand new Star of the Seas for the 7 night sailings, or if you want to go on Icon of the Seas down to the Port of Miami, so many fun things to do when it relates to Royal Caribbean. So many of those ship itineraries going to Perfect Day Coco Cay. Y'all know I love that private island. Jessica Slater's a terrific travel advisor. She can tell you all about it. Give her a call, 770-718-9147. That's 770-718-9147. You can also email her, jslater@dreamvacations.com. Jessica's great. She'll do a great job for you, and she can get you on a Royal Caribbean cruise vacation. I can tell you right now, that's where I wish I was here in this moment, because honestly, between the hedges, not our favorite day when you see a long home winning streak come to the end at the hands of the Alabama Crimson Tide. But as Rodrigo has pointed out, there'll be happier days to come. Georgia can get right back to work putting a winning streak together and take some of the building blocks from this game to hopefully put something together that gives Georgia a chance to be a better team by the end of the season than it is right now. And yet, at the same time, that's hard work. No guarantee how it's going to go. And obviously some pointed questions will continue to be asked about exactly what it was that prevented Georgia from getting this win today, when it really seems like, at least in a couple of areas, they had some things going for it. Rodrigo, any final word from you before we let you go here today?
It stings, but I think that we're going to be okay. I really do. I feel better about this team. Strangely, after this game, after the way they responded against Tennessee last week on the road, I think that we've seen a lot of really good stuff out of this team in these last 2 weeks. The defense being able to shut down Alabama and keep them completely out of the end zone, completely off the scoreboard in the second half, was really great to see. This defense showed potential tonight, even though they didn't have it all together in the first half. The defense showed a lot of potential. We've seen that the offense is very capable of, putting points on the board. So even though this one is really going to sting, I think that there's a lot of positives that we can take away from these last couple weeks, that our team is going to be okay moving forward.
Big thanks to Rodrigo Blankenship, Kaylee Mansell stepping in place of me tonight, obviously Jeff Sentell popping by, and for all of you that watched, called, participated, we appreciate that too. Not our favorite conversation. We don't like it when Georgia loses. Thankfully around here, we don't have to experience that too much. So this one certainly stings, but there'll be happier days to come. So can't wait to talk to you about that again next time. Hopefully my voice will be getting better. I'll be able to do that. Thank you for being here, part of our Dawg Nation postgame show. Check out all the rest of our game day coverage at DawgNation.com, and we'll talk to you again very soon.